Marrying a human for peace backfired when he revealed power. No alien expected the Vexler Empire had ruled the galaxy for 300 years. Their ships flew faster than any other race could build them. Their weapons killed from distances that made other species look helpless. When the Vexler wanted something, they took it. When they wanted a world, armies conquered it. No one stood against them because no one could. Then humans arrived from Earth with their small ships and primitive guns. The Vexler High Council watched Earth for months. They expected the humans to surrender or die. Instead, the humans fought back. They fought smart and hard. They won battles they should have lost. The Vexler commanders were confused. They did not understand how a weak species could hurt them. The High Council made a decision to end the war without more fighting. They would make a marriage alliance. The Princess Kalana would marry a human military leader. This marriage would bind the two species together in peace. The humans would lay down their weapons. The Vexler would stop their attacks. Both sides would accept the new arrangement. Princess Kalana was the daughter of the Vexler leader. She came from the royal house that had ruled for 10 generations. Her skin glowed with a silver light that showed her high birth. Her eyes were violet, and they could shift to different shades when she felt strong emotions. She wore the finest clothes and jewels in the empire. But she had no choice in her life. Everything she did served the empire. Everything she felt had to be put away. When the High Council told her about the marriage, Kalana said nothing. She bowed and accepted the order. That was what Vexler women of her rank did. They did not argue. They did not question. They obeyed, and their faces showed no pain. The human chosen for the marriage was Captain Christopher Hayes. He was a military officer who had led human forces against the Vexler. He was tall and strong. He had dark hair and dark eyes that were calm and smart. His record showed he was a good commander. He did not waste soldiers. He made plans that worked. He had caused the Vexler more trouble than any other human did. The High Council thought they were clever. They took the best human fighter and bound him to the Empire through marriage. His children would be half Vexler. His connection to the royal family would control human resistance forever. The plan seemed perfect to them. Christopher received orders to go to the Vexler station for the wedding. He knew this was not a choice. The human forces were losing the war. They had no ships strong enough to fight the Vexler fleet. Surrendering made sense if it would save human lives. He would marry the princess and live among the Vexler. He would do his duty to his people. He did not expect to feel anything for the alien woman they chose for him. The wedding happened in a Vexler ceremony that Christopher did not completely understand. The priest spoke in a language that the translator made difficult to follow. The princess stood across from him wearing clothes that seemed to flow like water made of light. When her hand touched his, he felt something strange. It was like an electric shock, but different. It was like her consciousness brushed against his own for just a moment. Kalana felt it too. She looked at Christopher, and for just a second, her professional mask broke. Her violet eyes showed surprise. Then the wall came back up and her face was calm again. After the ceremony, they were taken to private quarters that would be their home on the station. The rooms were large and strange. The furniture floated in the air. The walls could change color and show the stars outside. Everything was very advanced and very alien. Christopher looked at the space and felt how far from Earth he was. He was surrounded by alien technology and alien minds. He could never go home. This was his life now. Kalana entered the main room and began to speak about Vexler customs. She explained the daily routines they would follow. She told him about the duties of a royal husband. She spoke in a formal way that showed no emotion. But Christopher noticed something. When she thought he was not looking, her hand shook slightly. She was scared to dot over the first weeks. They learned each other slowly. Christopher asked questions about the Vexler and their way of thinking. Kalina answered his questions. She showed him how to use the technology in their quarters. She explained Vexler history and culture. He listened carefully and asked more questions. She began to notice that Christopher was different from Vexler males. He did not assume he was better than her. He listened when she spoke. He asked her opinions and seemed to really care about her answers. He was kind in a way that seemed strange to her. Vexler did not value kindness. They valued power and efficiency. One evening, they stood together, looking at the stars through the transparent wall of their quarters. Christopher asked Kalina about her life before the marriage. She told him about her childhood. She had been trained from age 5 to be a princess. She learned politics and science and strategy. She was taught to control her emotions because emotions made Vexler weak. She was taught that other species were less intelligent and less worthy of life. Everything she was told to believe, she believed. Christopher listened and asked more questions. He wanted to know what she really thought, not what she was trained to say. Slowly, Kalina began to speak her true thoughts. She admitted that she had doubts about what she had been taught. She said that she did not feel superior to humans. She said she was lonely in the royal house. Christopher told her about Earth. He described green forests and oceans. He told her about human families and how they stayed together. He told her about music and art and the things humans created just because they loved them, not because they had to. Kalina listened to every word. His descriptions seemed like they came from another universe entirely. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The Empire watched from a distance. The marriage seemed to be working. There was peace between the Vexler and humans. The human ships stayed in their systems. The Vexler stopped their attacks. Both sides seemed satisfied with the arrangement, but no one knew that something else was happening. Kalina and Christopher were not just following orders. They were becoming connected. They were becoming partners. When they talked, they understood each other in ways that should have been impossible. When they were apart, they wanted to be together again. When they touched, something electric passed between them that neither could explain. The Empire had made one dangerous mistake. They had brought together two people who would eventually ask hard questions. They had put a royal Vexler and a human soldier in the same space long enough for both of them to see that their enemy was not really an enemy at all. And they had no idea what would happen when that truth came to light. On a night when they could see 3 moons in the sky above the station, Christopher looked at Kalina and wanted to tell her everything. But he could not. He was keeping a secret so big that it could change the entire galaxy. He was keeping it locked inside himself where no one could find it. Not yet. The time was not right. But soon, Kalina would know the truth about what he really was. 3 years had passed since the marriage. The Vexler Empire watched the alliance with careful eyes. Peace held between the two species. Humans did not attack. The Vexler did not invade. It seemed the plan had worked perfectly. But inside the royal quarters on the station, something completely different was happening. Kalina spent her days in the archive towers where the oldest records of Vexler history were kept. She had always loved learning, but now her search became focused and urgent. She was looking for something specific. She was looking for answers to questions that did not make sense. The questions started small. Why did human weapons work so well against Vexler ships? The humans had less advanced technology. Their physics understanding was not as deep. Yet somehow their plans always seemed to find the weak points in Vexler defenses. It was too lucky. It was too consistent to be accident. Then there was Christopher himself. She had studied his biology carefully in the first year of marriage. His cells were strange. They changed in ways Vexler cells did not. His brain worked differently. His healing was faster than a human should be. When he was deeply asleep, She had measured energy patterns around him that her instruments could not identify. Something about him did not match the scientific understanding of human biology. Kalina dug deeper into the archives. She searched for old records that most Vexler never read. These were from times before the Empire became powerful. They were from when the Vexler were just a young species, learning to build ships and weapons. She found stories about the first ones. These beings had existed long before the Vexler rose to power. The records called them gods, but Kalina knew that was just old language for advanced beings. The first ones had walked among the stars. They had built impossible things. Then they had disappeared. All that remained were fragments of stories and warnings that no one understood anymore. One passage made her stop reading. It said, "Beware the ones who hide among the young species. They wear the skin of the small ones to learn their ways. When the time comes, they will remember who they were. When they remember, the galaxy will change." Kalina read that passage 50 times. She checked the translation 3 times. The meaning was clear, but it seemed impossible. She carried the information with her like a heavy stone. That night, she could not sleep. She lay in the darkness next to Christopher and studied his face. In sleep, something about him seemed different. There was a light around him that she had always assumed was just the station lights reflecting off his skin. But now she wondered if it was something else entirely. She decided to tell him what she had found. She could not keep this secret. She could not pretend to understand nothing. The next day they walked together on the observation deck. This was their favorite place. The station rotated slowly, and from the observation deck, they could see the entire galaxy spread out below them. Stars burned in the darkness like diamonds scattered across black cloth. Kalina told Christopher about the old records. She told him about the first ones and the warnings. She watched his face carefully as she spoke. Christopher did not answer immediately. He stood very still. For a moment, Kalina thought she saw something change in him. His body seemed to vibrate at a frequency that was just at the edge of her perception. Then he was still again. When he finally spoke, his voice was very different. It was deeper, and it carried layers of sound that her ears should not have been able to hear. "The humans have been fighting better than you expected," Christopher said. "Have you asked yourself why?" Kalina nodded. "Yes, I have thought about this many times. We are not what you think we are," Christopher said. "Humanity was never primitive. We have never been weak. When we came out of Earth, we had already decided to hide our true power. We stayed hidden so we could understand the galaxy in peace. We wanted to learn how to be part of a larger universe without bringing war with us." Kalina felt fear move through her. "What do you mean by hidden? What is your true power?" Christopher reached out and took her hand. When his skin touched her skin, something changed. It was like the walls between her mind and his mind became thin. She felt his consciousness expand around hers. She felt the vastness of his being. She felt knowledge that was too large to understand. She felt the weight of years that should have been impossible. She felt his true nature, and it broke her understanding of what he was. Then the connection ended, and she was on her knees. Christopher caught her before she fell. Her body was shaking. Her mind was trying to process what she had experienced. "That is what I am," Christopher said quietly. "That is what all humans truly are. We are the descendants of the first ones. We chose to become human. We chose to forget so we could learn and live. Some of us, like me, volunteered to live completely in the human way. We forgot everything about what we were." Kalina could not speak. She looked at her husband of 3 years and tried to understand what she had just learned. The man she had married was not a man at all. He was something else entirely. He was a being from the oldest age of the galaxy, living inside a human form. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. Her voice was very small. "Because I love you," Christopher said. "And I cannot keep this hidden from you anymore. Love makes humans reveal things that we are supposed to keep secret. I tried to stay hidden. I tried to keep my true nature locked away. But being with you, being connected to you, it breaks through everything. It makes the walls come down." Kalina looked at the stars. She understood that everything she knew about her marriage was a lie. But she also understood that the lie had changed into something true. The feelings between them were real even if everything else was false. "What does this mean?" she asked. "What happens now?" "The High Council believes they put a simple human near the heart of their power," Christopher said. "They thought they were being clever by controlling a weak species through marriage. What they did not understand is that they placed a mirror in front of their own future. They are about to see what they really are." "You are going to do something," Kalina said. "You are going to change everything." "Yes," Christopher said, "but only if you are with me. I cannot do this alone. I need someone from the Vexler who understands. I need someone who can see both sides and judge what is right and what is wrong." Kalina thought about her life. She thought about what she had been taught. She thought about the things she had come to believe through knowing Christopher. She thought about the vast consciousness she had felt when he touched her mind. She stood up and looked at her husband. "Tell me everything," she said. "Tell me what you really are. Tell me what you want to do. Tell me everything, and then I will decide." Christopher took her hand, and they walked together deeper into the station where no one would hear them. Behind them, the stars burned on. The galaxy had no idea that the marriage meant to create peace had instead created the beginning of a transformation that would change everything forever. The weeks after the military conflict were filled with work that nobody expected. The Vexler High Council dissolved the old form of government. In its place, they created a federation of allied species. This new structure included the Vexler, humans and eventually representatives from other species that the Vexler had conquered. All of them would have a voice in how the Federation governed. Christopher served as an advisor to the new Federation Council. He used his knowledge to help the Vexler understand technology in new ways. He brought human scientific approaches and taught them to Vexler engineers. The combination of Vexler technology and human problem-solving created advances that surprised everyone. Kalina was appointed as the ambassador between all species. She was perfect for this role because she understood both the Vexler way of thinking and the way that humans thought. She could translate between them. She could find agreements where others saw only conflict. She worked every day to build trust between species that had recently been at war. The human forces gradually became part of the new Federation military. They did not need to hide their abilities anymore. Humans began working openly with Vexler soldiers to create new tactics and new weapons. What had been secret now became shared knowledge. Earth itself was declared an open world. All species were welcome to visit and to learn. Humans taught other species about art and music and philosophy. The Vexlar brought their mathematics and their physics. Together, civilizations that had only seen each other as enemies began to understand each other. But there was a cost to all this change. Some Vexlar still could not accept that their empire was gone. Extremists attacked the Federation Council. Terrorists tried to destroy the new government. Kalina survived 3 assassination attempts. Christopher had to stop 2 major rebellions from taking control of Vexler military resources. During this turbulent time, Christopher and Kalina discovered that their bond ran deeper than even they understood. The Vexler marriage connection that had been meant as just a political tool had become something far more. Their minds were linked at a level that transcended normal communication. When one of them was in danger, the other felt it immediately. This became clear during the 3rd assassination attempt on Kalina. Extremists attacked their shuttle as she traveled to negotiate with one of the resistant Vexler military groups. The shuttle was hit by weapons fire. It began to crash toward the surface of the nearest moon. Christopher felt Kalana's fear and pain from across the star system. He moved through space in a way that a human body should not have been able to survive. He caught the falling shuttle in an energy field and brought it safely to the ground. He pulled Kalana from the wreckage and healed her injuries with nothing but his consciousness and will. Kalana woke up in his arms and understood that Christopher's love for her was as deep as his ancient consciousness could go. He had broken every rule of the first ones to save her life. He had revealed powers that no human was supposed to use. He had made himself vulnerable in ways that could have destroyed him. "I would do anything for you," he told her. That is not something that the first ones ever allowed themselves to feel. We are supposed to remain separate. We are supposed to stay untouched by normal emotion. But you made that impossible. You changed me. Kalana held him and cried. She had been born to be a perfect Vexler princess. She had been trained to control every emotion. She had been shaped to believe that love was a weakness. But Christopher had taught her that love was actually the most powerful force in the entire universe. Over the next year, things became more stable. The Federation established itself. Trade routes opened between worlds. Universities were created where a young Vexler could learn from humans and young humans could learn from Vexler. Art and music and philosophy were shared. Children grew up learning both Vexler and human culture together. The resistance movements gradually faded. Some of the extremists were captured and faced judgment. Others eventually accepted that the world had changed and they could either adapt or be left behind. Most of them chose to adapt. Christopher and Kalana built a home on the main Federation station. It was a place that combined human comfort with Vexler technology. They filled it with art from a dozen different species. They hosted gatherings where leaders from different worlds could meet and talk. Their home became a symbol of what the Federation was trying to create. Kalana's parents eventually came to understand what their daughter had done. They saw how her choices had saved the Vexler species from self-destruction. They came to respect Christopher and to care for him as a person rather than as an alien threat. Kalana's mother told her that the choice to marry for the Empire had actually created something far more important than the Empire itself. Christopher received messages from other members of the First Ones. Most of them were angry that he had revealed himself so completely. But some of them understood that the age of hiding was over. Slowly, other First Ones began to manifest themselves across the galaxy. They took the forms of different species. They integrated themselves into alien civilizations. They began to help guide the entire galaxy toward peace instead of conquest. 5 years after the marriage, Kalana gave birth to a son. He had his mother's violet eyes and his father's dark hair. He possessed abilities from both parents. He could survive in both human space and in the Vexler atmosphere. He could feel the presence of other First Ones. But most importantly, he carried within him the combined wisdom of both species. On the day that the child was born, Christopher stood with Kalana at the observation window. They looked out at the stars. The Federation now controlled half the galaxy. Peace had spread far beyond what anyone had expected. The marriage that was meant to subjugate the humans had instead created the foundation for everything that came after. "What are we going to call him?" Kalana asked. Christopher thought about his long history. He thought about the first humans who had chosen to hide their true nature. He thought about the moment when he had awakened to what he really was. He thought about the choice to stand with the Vexler instead of destroying them. "Lucas," he said. "We will call him Lucas. It is an old human name. It means light bringer, and that is what he will be. He will bring light to this galaxy that has known too much darkness." Kalana smiled and held her son close. The marriage that the High Council had arranged to control humanity had done something completely different. It had created the bridge that allowed two ancient species to find peace. It had changed the course of history, and it had proven that love was more powerful than conquest or control. The stars burned above them, no longer symbols of territory to be claimed, but promises of new worlds to explore together. The age of the Vexler conquest was over. The age of partnership had truly begun. And it had all started with one political marriage that was supposed to fail. Christopher told Kalina everything over the next 2 weeks. He spoke in private rooms deep in the station where no one could listen. He told her about the first ones and their choice to become human. He told her about the plan to stay hidden while the galaxy developed. He told her about the moment when the Vexler began their conquest and the humans made the choice to resist. He explained that the Vexler Empire was dying, even though no one understood it yet. A civilization built on conquest could not last forever. Eventually, there were no more worlds to conquer. Eventually, the people inside the Empire began to fight each other for power. The Vexler were already starting to rot from the inside. Within 1 generation, the Empire would tear itself apart in civil war. Kalina listened and understood. She had seen the signs herself. She had watched her father lose ground in the High Council. She had noticed resources being diverted to private holdings. She had felt the growing tension between different Vexler families as they jockeyed for position. "What do you want to do?" she asked. "I want to help the Vexler survive," Christopher said. "I want to show your people that there is another way. Humanity can share what we know. We can help your technology become better. We can help your society become stronger. But only if the Vexler choose to accept partnership instead of conquest. Only if they are willing to become something new. The High Council will never accept this," Kalina said. "They will see it as weakness. They will see it as a threat." "Then we have to make them understand," Christopher said. "We have to show them proof that cannot be denied. We have to make them see that fighting against us is impossible and that accepting us is the only path forward." Kalina knew what this meant. It meant war. It meant revealing the truth. It meant the end of everything she had known. But she also knew that Christopher was right. The Empire was already dying. If they did nothing, millions of Vexler would die in the civil war that was coming. If they acted, there might be a way to save her people. She made a decision. She would stand with Christopher. She would help him reveal his true nature to the High Council. She would be the bridge between humanity and the Vexler. It was her duty now. They spent the next month preparing. Kalina gathered information about which council members were most likely to accept the truth and which would fight against it. She identified which military commanders could be convinced to stand down. She created plans for how to present the information in a way that would convince rather than terrify. Christopher worked on something different. He began slowly using his powers in small ways. He altered the designs of weapons so they would break down. He changed the fuel in ships so they would fail. He made small problems happen that the Vexler engineers could not explain. He wanted them to realize that they were not as powerful as they believed. The High Council grew frustrated. Their military was experiencing failures they could not understand. New ships broke down during tests. Weapons misfired. Systems failed for no reason the scientists could identify. The council began to argue about whether sabotage was happening. Some members wanted to suspect Christopher. Others thought it was internal Vexler enemies working against them. Then Kalina asked to address the council. She said she had important information about the future of the Empire. The council was curious. They met in the Great Chamber where all major decisions were made. The chamber was circular and huge. Holographic displays floated in the air showing data about the Empire. Kalina stood in the center and presented a new kind of information. She showed them data about the Empire's future if nothing changed. The graph showed civil war breaking out. The graph showed collapse of the economy. The graph showed millions of Vexler dying and fighting between different power groups. The data was cold and clear and impossible to argue with. "These projections are correct," she said. "Your empire is ending. Within a generation, the Vexler civilization will destroy itself. I have the proof in these calculations." The council members looked at the data and felt fear. Kalina's analysis was not wrong. They had all seen the problems appearing. They had all noticed the tension and the problems. But none of them had done the hard math to see where it was leading. "There is one way to prevent this," Kalina said. "There is one path that leads to survival instead of destruction." She paused and looked directly at Christopher, who stood with his arms crossed on the side of the chamber. "My husband is not a simple human," Kalina said. "What he is something that will change everything. I ask the council to open your minds and listen to the truth." Christopher stepped forward. As he did, his form began to change. The careful human appearance fell away. His body became luminous with energy that light seemed to bend around. His presence expanded until the entire chamber felt small around him. His voice spoke, and it was like hearing the sound of the universe itself. The council members fell back in fear. Some tried to call for military assistance. Others stood frozen by the power they were sensing. Christopher told them what he truly was. He told them about the first ones and the hidden humanity. He told them that humans were far more ancient and far more powerful than any Vexler could understand. He told them that he was showing them the truth because the Vexler needed to understand what they were really facing. But then Christopher did something the council did not expect. He showed them visions. He put images directly into their minds. They saw what he truly wanted to create. They saw a galaxy where the Vexler and humans worked together. They saw technology that combined both species' knowledge. They saw a future of peace instead of endless conquest. Some council members were angry. Some were terrified. But some understood the truth of what they were being shown. The empire could not continue as it was. Partnership was the only option. Fighting against humanity would only lead to the Vexler's destruction. The chamber exploded into argument. Different council members shouted at each other. Some demanded that Christopher be destroyed. Others argued for accepting the partnership. The debate went on for hours. In the end, it was Kalina's voice that cut through the noise. She stood in the center of the chamber and demanded silence. "I stand with my husband," she said. "I accept what he is. I accept what humanity truly is. I choose partnership over destruction. I choose the future over the past. The question is, what do the rest of you choose?" The council members looked at each other. They looked at the Vexler princess, who had just declared her loyalty to an alien being. They looked at Christopher in his true form. They looked at the data that showed their civilization was ending. One by one, some of them bowed their heads. Not in surrender, but in acceptance. The age of Vexler conquest was ending. The age of partnership was beginning. Not all the council members accepted the new reality. Some of them could not let go of the belief that the Vexler were superior to all other species. These members refused to accept Christopher's existence and refused to accept a partnership with humanity. They saw it as the end of everything the Vexler had built. A group of military commanders who agreed with these council members came to them with a plan. They said they could eliminate Christopher before he could do more damage. They said that if they killed him, the threat from humanity would disappear. The Vexler could return to their old ways. The empire could be restored. The resistant council members authorized the attack. They ordered Christopher and Kalina to come to a military training ground for a test of power. It was supposed to be a demonstration. Really, it was a trap. Christopher knew about the trap before they arrived. He could feel the soldiers waiting and the weapons they had prepared. He could sense the violence that was about to happen. But he did not run. He did not hide. He stood with his wife and prepared for the conflict. The training ground was huge and empty. It was designed so that soldiers could train without destroying the station. Weapons fire would be contained by force fields. There was nothing to hide behind and nowhere to escape to. Kalina felt fear move through her as soldiers began to appear. There were hundreds of them. They wore armor that was bright blue and silver. They carried weapons that could burn through metal. They surrounded the training ground and pointed their guns at Christopher. "Stand down," one of the military commanders said through a speaker. "You have no way to win. Surrender yourself, and the princess will be spared." Christopher did not answer. Instead, he took Kalina's hand and pulled her close. "Do not be afraid," he told her. "I will not let them hurt you." The soldiers opened fire. Beams of energy shot across the training ground. The weapons burned hot enough to melt stone. A normal human would have been destroyed instantly. Christopher moved in a way that should have been impossible. He was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. The energy beams passed through empty space where he had been a moment before. He was not moving like a human. He was moving like pure consciousness taking physical form. The soldiers fired again and again. Their weapons could not touch him. Sweat began to form on their faces. They looked at each other in confusion. Their most powerful weapons were completely useless. Christopher did not attack with force. Instead, he did something different. He reached out with his consciousness and made contact with each soldier one at a time. He showed each of them what he truly was. He showed them the vastness of his power. He showed them that fighting him was as hopeless as an ant fighting a mountain. But he also showed them something else. He showed them his intention. He wanted no one to die. He wanted only acceptance. The first soldier lowered his weapon. Then another. Then more. One by one, the Vexler soldiers stopped fighting. Some of them dropped their weapons completely. Some of them just held them down at their sides, refusing to use them. The military commander was shocked. He ordered the soldiers to attack again. This time, he ordered them to kill Kalina if necessary. He said that the princess was a traitor and that she had to be destroyed. But the soldiers refused. They had felt what Christopher was. They understood now that their weapons and their power meant nothing against what they were really facing. More than that, they had felt the truth in what he showed them. They no longer wanted to fight. The commander called for backup. He summoned the remaining loyal soldiers in his command. He prepared for a larger battle. But something happened before the new soldiers could arrive. Christopher released his hold on his human form completely. For just a moment, everyone in the training ground saw his true shape. It was not ugly or terrifying. It was beautiful in a way that the human mind could barely understand. It was like looking at creation itself. It was like seeing the moment when the universe was born. It was power and knowledge and ancient wisdom made visible. Then he returned to his human shape. But this time, it was different. He was not trying to hide what he was anymore. His human form glowed with the power that was underneath. Everyone watching could see through the surface to the vast being within. The commander fell to his knees. His face was wet with tears. He had felt the presence of something so far beyond his understanding that his entire framework for understanding power had been destroyed. He understood now that the Vexler were not powerful. They were children playing with sticks compared to what Christopher truly was. He called back the remaining soldiers. He ordered them to stand down. The battle that never happened was over. Kalina held on to Christopher's hand. She felt the energy flowing through him. She felt the power that he was containing just so that her human body would not be destroyed by his presence. "It is done," Christopher said quietly. "The ones who could not accept the truth have made their choice." Some of them will come to understand. Some of them never will. But the choice has been made. Your people can now decide what comes next. The council members who had authorized the attack appeared in the training ground. They looked terrified. They understood now that they had been playing a game with someone who existed on a completely different level of reality than they did. "We surrender," the lead council member said. His voice shook with fear. "We accept the partnership with humanity. We accept whatever terms you offer. Please do not destroy us." Christopher looked at the Vexler. He could have killed them all with a thought. He could have ended them instantly. But instead, he simply nodded. "Humanity wants the Vexler to survive," he said. "We want to help you become something better. We want to create something that is new. But that can only happen if you truly accept what you are and what we are. Can you do that?" The council members looked at each other. They saw the reality of the situation. They saw that their choice was to accept partnership or face destruction. There was no third option. "We accept," they said. Christopher released Kalina's hand and walked forward. He did not use violence. He simply made his presence known. The resisting council members felt the weight of his consciousness, and they understood absolutely that opposition was impossible. The battle that could have destroyed the station was over. The Vexler had made their choice. The age of conquest was truly finished now. What came next was unknown, but it would be different. The Vexler would face the future not as conquerors, but as partners with a species they had underestimated for far too long.